Welcome to the biggest winners and losers of the NFL trade deadline. I am your mouth breather, Brandon Perna. And while this year's trade deadline wasn't quite as flashy as last season's, there were some big moves that were made. The Commanders went full-blown fire sale, the Vikings made a move for a QB, and the Lions added an interesting player to help their offense. And I also think the Bills filled the biggest area of need in all of the teams in the hunt. So let's look at who really won and lost the trade deadline. We are 2,000 subscribers away from hitting 500K. If you can make it happen in this video, I will forget about it. Today's episode is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy, and this week they are matching your first deposit up to $500, which is an exclusive offer for new customers. All you have to do to sign up is use my link below or my code THATSGOOD and make your first deposit. We're in that amazing tiny window where we have baseball, football, basketball, and hockey to build pick'ems or play fantasy with. This week I got back into the winner's circle with the Battle Royale drafts. I highly recommend you play in some of those. It's a 6-person draft where you play the field, not just who you draft against. It has $300K in prizes and is a lot of fun. The pick'em games are now live in all of these yellow states, and with 5-player pick'em entries, you can 20x your money. Again, my link is below. My code is THATSGOOD. Sign up now at Underdog. All right, before I get into the big, sexy trades, here's a refresher of all the players who were traded before the rush of the trade deadline. My first real losers, the Packers. Corner Rasul Douglas is going to the Buffalo Bills, and I swear to God, if this doesn't take Buffalo all the way this time, nothing will. Buffalo acquires a 5th-round pick and Rasul Douglas, and in exchange, Green Bay gets a worse defense. Okay, they also get a 3rd-rounder. And $6.5 million in cap space that I hope they can use to refund their fans this season. Now, I know this is a good move for the Bills solely based on all of the reactions from our favorite Packers fans on Twitter. In classic fashion, this old Mike McCarthy quote about how Green Bay approaches the trade deadline feels apropos, which is just a douchey word for appropriate.
What's the trade deadline like around here? Is it a lot of conversation or just standard?
Is that what you guys? I thought it was next week. No? Yeah, that's what it's like.
Now, if you remember, Douglas had 9 picks in 2021 and 2022 combined with the Packers, and almost all of them seemingly coming in the most clutch moments, which does indeed make the Bills winners. Now, the Bills, they're still looking for secondary help because they lost Trey White for the season and probably elected for Douglas after realizing that Bears corner Jalen Johnson was off the table. Bills love tables. Losers, the Titans. Safety Kevin Byard was traded over a week ago, but I think this is one of the savviest trades of the season still. The Titans traded away Kevin Byard, weakening their defense, and then immediately got awesome on offense. So, I'd say Tennessee pulled the trigger to Plaxico. Why the hell would you start to dismantle your team, Tennessee, before you had any idea of what Will Levis could do during a game? I can confirm Howie Roseman and the Eagles told the Titans that there was indeed an anti-takesy-backsy clause in the contract, and Byard is staying in Philly. Philly sent safety Terrell Edmonds to Tennessee with the 5th and 6th rounder in this trade. Byard already played 72 snaps in his first game with the Eagles, and I think as the season progresses, we will see Byard's impact as a leader and a play caller on that back end for the Birds. Winners, the Vikings and Jos Dobbs. Now, after losing Kirk Cousins for the season, the Minnesota Vikings traded for Cardinals QB Jos Dobbs, a move I actually predicted on Monday's episode of GPS.
Call?
I call the Dallas Cowboys.
Get Trey Lance?
No, Cooper Rush.
Cooper Rush?
I actually, you know what the Vikings should really do? They want to shake up the NFL world, Tom. You know who they sign? Not 1, but 2 quarterbacks. Cam Newton, Colin Kaepernick. Boom, boom.
Now, I don't know if Minnesota is definitely a winner here, but Dobbs is. He's going from a group of skill players in Arizona where the best dude was Marquise Brown to Minnesota, who has TJ Hawkinson at tight end, who is second in yards to only Travis Kelce. Justin Jefferson will get back when he's healthy, and possibly the best rookie receiver in the league in Jordan Addison. Plus, he's getting a massive upgrade in front of him on offensive line as the Vikings have quietly the third best ranked pass blocking unit in the league. My concern is Kirk Cousins playing wizardry in that pocket is responsible for a chunk of that line's success. Now, Dobbs can make himself a ton of money if he goes out there and slings it with that crew. Not necessarily as the Vikings' future QB, but as a legit backup. Perhaps he'll parlay that money into a successful rocket science career after his playing days are over and by Twitter. Dobbs might not even play, all right? But it really depends on how Minnesota feels about Jaren Hall. But even as a backup, I think you have to love having Dobbs in your QB room. The real losers here are the Browns, who traded Dobbs to the Cardinals right before the season started, and they could have really used Dobbs, I think, more than the Cardinals this season. Speaking of Cleveland, and this is about to get really fucking confusing, Cleveland is going to Jacksonville. No, Arthur Modell isn't moving the Browns in the middle of the night again. Guard Ezra Cleveland is leaving the Vikings to join the Jaguars. Minnesota signed former Broncos guard Dalton Risner a couple weeks ago. He's been playing in place of Ezra while Ezra's been inactive, so that offensive line I just hyped up for you, Jos Dobbs, I think it got a little worse. Winners? The Jags, the Jaguars. Ezra Cleveland is arguably a top 10 guard in the NFL right now, so I guess there are a few guys better than Ezra. And I like the Jacksonville Jaguars adding help to one of the areas they do need to improve. My only real win-win trade is Leonard Williams going to the Seattle Seahawks. Now, the Seahawks were buyers at the trade deadline. They're bolstering their defensive line with 2016 Pro Bowler Leonard Williams, who was previously traded from the Jets to the Giants back in 2019. Seattle gave up a 2024 second-round pick and a 2025 fifth-rounder to acquire the 29-year-old who's had only 1.5 sacks this year, but did have 7 pressures last Sunday against the Jets. The Giants will also pay pretty much all of his salary for the rest of the year, which is a bit atypical. And I don't feel like I'm qualified to criticize a Seahawks trade. Maybe I'm overly qualified, but it feels like they might have given up just a little too much for Williams and draft comp, who's also in the last year of a 3-year, $64 million deal. Seattle needed to get some juice up front after Uchenna Nwosu went to injured reserve. I think the Giants actually got the best return of any dealing team with the 3rd and 5th incoming. I really like this trade for the Giants, who are 2-6 and going nowhere this season, and now have some ammo in the next couple of drafts to potentially rebuild a... How do you rebuild something that's burning all the way to the ground? You gotta wait, it's gonna take a while. Biggest loser? Devante Adams. When Adam Schefter says
to any potential Devante Adams trade by the 4 o'clock Eastern deadline today was, to quote, not a chance in hell. So there's your answer, not a chance in hell.
You know you are screwed. There are only 3 teams I would have been okay with seeing Devante Adams go to. My Broncos, my Bills, and the Panthers. Pretty wild, though, that the chances of Aaron Rodgers returning this season are better than Devante Adams' chances of hitting 1,000 receiving yards. So, the NFL's version of Michael Myers, Josh McDaniels, claims another soul on Hallows Eve. Winners? The Bears. The Bears are buyers at the trade deadline? I guess so, and they're sending a 2nd-round pick to the Washington Commanders in exchange for 27-year-old defensive end Montez Sweat, who's already racked up 6.5 sacks through 8 games this season. After the Chase Claypool debacle last year, Bears fans might feel a little iffy about giving up a 2nd-rounder for a vet when they've got so many holes to plug, but Sweat is a more valuable player, and they're basically getting a head start on extending him going into the offseason, where they're going to have $110 million in cap space burning a hole in both of their pockets. This is also expected projected to be a weak draft class for pass rushers, something that the Bears could desperately use, so I understand their willingness to drop a pick in exchange for a known commodity on the edge. They obviously still have those 2 first-round draft picks, which means if they ultimately decide they don't need a QB, they can turn one of those picks into multiple premium picks. Losers? The Commanders, who after trading Montez Sweat also traded Chase Young. Now call me crazy, but it's never a great idea to trade away both of your premier edge rushers. To me, this is the NFL trade equivalent of the Josh Harris handshake. Ah, you forgot about that, didn't ya? So it appears the Commanders are trying to rebuild for the future. I understand that, but I don't think just a second and third rounder for both of your edge rushers is the best approach. But here's the crazy part. The 49ers are giving up just a third-round draft pick for Chase Young. A comp pick, by the way, which I'm sure Chicago can't love to see after giving up the 35th overall pick for Montez Sweat. That 49ers comp pick was also the reward for losing D'Amico Ryans to the Texans. The 49ers got Trent Williams from the Commanders for a 5th-round pick back in 2020 and are now getting Chase Young for that late third. Makes you wonder what kind of dirt they have on the Commanders front office. Just kidding, everyone has had so much dirt on that front office, it's still paying dividends. Winners, the 49ers, whose defensive line now consists of Chase Young, who is an upgrade over Cleveland Farrell by quite a bit, Javon Hargrave, Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, Nick Bosa, and Randy Gregory. So I think the 49ers are going to try and do to their opponents what the Commanders allow to happen to Sam Howell every week. In all seriousness, the 49ers do have a ton of names on that defensive line, but they haven't actually been all that effective this season. They're just 27th in the league in sack percentage. This needs to be the best defensive line in football to pay dividends. That said, Chase Young is playing quietly very well. The 49ers could just rent him for the rest of this season, like we've seen the Eagles do, or they could elect to try and pay him and keep him around. And if you like next-gen stats, the Niners now have 2 of the 5 best players at generating QB pressure. If you like Pro Football Focus, they have the 3rd and 8th best players at QB pressures. Young has 6 sacks this season, and I bet he and Bosa now will both finish with double digits. Winners? A sneaky one, the Lions, who shipped a 2025 6th-round pick to Cleveland for wide receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones, who had a limited role in the Browns' offense this year after putting up 839 yards and 3 TDs in 2022. DPJ has just 97 yards this season, but could thrive in his hometown of Detroit and gives the Lions some depth at receiver following the midseason retirement of Marvin Jones. Also, Jameson Williams has not been good since returning from his suspension this season. He has just 6 receptions in 4 games, and outside that one amazing touchdown grab, every time I see J-Mo, it's usually a drop. Donovan Peoples-Jones is just a solid receiver who could make an immediate impact. Thanks for watching That's Good Sports. Winners and losers of the trade deadline. If you haven't watched the winners and losers of NFL Week 8, feel free to check that crap out now. And again, let's get to 500K.